The stars had never looked so dark. 3,000 ships moved through the empty space between worlds. They were massive. They were powerful. They belonged to the Collective, an empire that had conquered more than 200 planets across the galaxy. Overlord stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was tall even for his species. His gray skin was marked with the scars of many battles. His eyes, deep purple and cold, looked at the small blue planet on the main screen. Earth, the third planet from a young yellow star, home to a species called humans. "How long until we reach their world?" asked. His voice was deep and calm. He had done this many times before. This was just another conquest, another world to add to the collection. Commander stepped forward. She was younger than, with sharper features and quicker eyes. She had served under him for 15 years. 6 hours at current speed, Overlord. Our scouts report no resistance. Their orbital defenses appear to be basic satellites, nothing that can harm us. Smiled, it was not a kind smile. As expected, these humans are still children. They have only been traveling in space for less than 100 years. They still fight among themselves. They still believe they are alone in the universe. Tactician approached from the tactical station. He was older, his gray skin showing the pale patches of age. He had planned over 300 invasions. None had failed. "The humans have nuclear weapons," he reported. "Primitive fusion technology, chemical rockets. Their fastest ships would take months to reach their nearest planet. They are no threat to us." "No threat at all," agreed. He looked around at his bridge crew. 50 officers worked at their stations. They were confident, they were proud. They had never lost a battle. They had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. They had met many species. Some had been peaceful and had been conquered easily. Some had fought back and had been destroyed. The result was always the same. They were stronger. They were smarter. They always won. "Send a message to the fleet," ordered. "Tell them to prepare for standard invasion protocol. We will take their major cities first. Their leaders will surrender within hours. Those who resist will be eliminated." Nodded and turned to carry out the order, but something made her stop. She looked at the blue planet on the screen. It was beautiful, covered in water and clouds, green and brown land masses. It looked peaceful. "Overlord," she said carefully, "should we attempt communication first? Perhaps they will surrender without a fight." Laughed, the sound was harsh. "Why would we give them that chance? Surrender means we must negotiate, we must make promises, we must pretend to treat them as equals." He shook his head. "No, we will show them our power, we will break them, then they will serve us without question." Said nothing more. She had learned long ago that did not like to be questioned. She returned to her station and sent the message to the fleet. Far away on the blue planet, sensors began to beep. In Seoul, South Korea, a young officer named Minyu was the first to see it. He was working the night shift at the Global Defense Center. It was supposed to be a quiet job. Nothing ever happened. The screens showed satellites, space debris, and the occasional asteroid. Nothing exciting. But tonight was different. Minyu stared at his screen. 3,000 objects had appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were moving fast. They were moving toward Earth. His hands began to shake. He checked the data 3 times. It was real. This was not a drill. This was not a mistake. He picked up the phone and called his supervisor. Then he called the emergency line. Within minutes, alarms were ringing in every major government building on the planet. Admiral was asleep when his phone rang. He was 62 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for a threat that everyone told him would never come. Many people had laughed at him. They called him paranoid. They said he was wasting money on impossible scenarios. Had ignored them all. He had built the global defense network in secret. He had recruited the best scientists. He had developed weapons that nobody knew existed, and he had waited. Now, as he listened to the voice on the phone, he felt no fear. He felt only a cold, hard determination. "How many ships?" he asked. 3,000, sir, maybe more." "Time until arrival?" 6 hours." Closed his eyes for a moment, then he opened them. "Wake everyone. Activate all defense systems. I want every weapon online in 2 hours." He ended the call and got out of bed. His wife was awake now, watching him with worried eyes. "It's happening, isn't it?" she asked quietly. Nodded, "Yes, it's happening." He dressed quickly and left for the command center. The streets were empty and dark. The city did not know yet. Soon, everyone would know. Dr. Shin received the same call. He was in his laboratory, as always. He rarely slept. There was too much work to do. Project was his life's work. 20 years of research, 20 years of testing, 20 years of people telling him it was impossible. Now it was time to prove them wrong. He gathered his team. There were only 12 of them, but they were the best in the world. They had built something that nobody believed could exist, a weapon that could focus the power of a star into a single beam of light. "Begin full activation," ordered. "We have 6 hours." His team moved fast. They knew what was at stake. They knew that if they failed, humanity would die. General was already at the Seoul command bunker when arrived. She was 50 years old, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had been partner in building the defense network. She believed in preparation. She believed in strength. She believed that humanity could protect itself. "The council is meeting in 30 minutes, she told. "They want to know if we should try to communicate with the aliens." Sat down at his station. Screens surrounded him, showing data from every satellite and sensor on Earth. "We will communicate," he said. "We will give them one chance to turn back. One warning. If they do not listen, we will destroy them." Raised an eyebrow. "You are confident." "I have to be," replied. "If I am not confident, how can I ask others to be brave?" High above Earth, Captain Park floated in the command center of station. It was hidden behind the moon, invisible to anyone looking from Earth or space. It was humanity's secret weapon, a massive platform armed with technology that would seem like magic to anyone who saw it. Was 35 years old. She had been a fighter pilot before being recruited for this mission. She had trained for 5 years in secret. She had never told anyone what she did, not her family, not her friends. She had given up everything to be here. Now she understood why. "All stations report ready," her second officer announced. "Weapons are charging, targeting systems are online." Looked at the screens showing the approaching fleet. 3,000 ships, millions of soldiers, the largest invasion force in galactic history. And they had no idea what was waiting for them. "Good," she said calmly. "Now we wait." On the Eternal Dominion, Overlord watched Earth grow larger on his screen. It was such a small world, such a weak species. This would be easy. Commander studied her tactical display. Something bothered her, but she could not say what. The humans were too quiet. They had detected the fleet by now. They must have. But there was no panic, no attempted communication, no desperate launch of their primitive weapons. It was almost like they were waiting. She shook her head. That was impossible. No primitive species had ever been prepared for these humans would be no different. Still, she decided to run more scans, just to be safe. 6 hours. That was all the time humanity had. 6 hours to prepare for the greatest battle in their history. 6 hours to prove that they were not the weak, primitive species the galaxy believed them to be. In cities around the world, people continued their normal lives. They did not know that their future was about to change forever. They did not know that somewhere in the darkness of space, 3,000 ships were coming to enslave them. But their leaders knew, their defenders knew, and they were ready. Admiral looked at the clock. 5 hours and 50 minutes remaining. "Send the warning," he ordered. "Let them know we are not afraid." Lieutenant Minyu sat at the communications console. His heart was beating fast, but his hands were steady. He had trained for this moment. He had practiced the words 1,000 times, but he never thought he would actually have to say them. Admiral stood behind him. General was at his side. The entire command center was silent. Every officer watched the young lieutenant. The weight of humanity rested on his shoulders. "Open all channels," ordered quietly. "Every frequency, every wavelength, make sure they hear us." Minyu pressed the buttons. Green lights appeared on his screen. The connection was ready. The message would travel at the speed of light. It would reach the alien fleet in seconds. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "This is Lieutenant Minyu of the United Earth Defense Force. I am speaking on behalf of all humanity. You are entering sovereign human space. This is your only warning." He paused. His voice was calm and clear. He continued. "Turn back now. Leave our solar system. We do not want conflict. We do not want war, but we will defend ourselves. We will protect our world. We will protect our people. You have 1 hour to reverse your course. If you do not, we will consider your presence an act of war, and we will respond with all the force we have." He paused again. Then he added one final line. "This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is a fact. 1 hour, choose wisely." The transmission ended. Minyu let out a long breath. His hands were shaking now. He had just spoken to beings from another world. He had just threatened an empire that had conquered hundreds of planets. Admiral placed a hand on his shoulder. "Well done," he said simply. On the Eternal Dominion, the message arrived. An officer translated it and played it for the bridge crew. When it finished, there was silence. Then Overlord began to laugh. It started as a small sound. Then it grew louder. Soon, the entire bridge was laughing. Officers pointed at the screen where the small blue planet floated. They could not believe what they had heard. "Did they just threaten us?" Tactician asked, his voice full of disbelief. "Did those primitives just give us a warning?" Wiped his eyes. He had not laughed so hard in years. "It seems they did. How brave, how foolish, how wonderfully stupid." Commander was not laughing. She stood at her station, studying the data from her scans. Something was wrong. The energy readings from Earth were higher than they should be, much higher. There were strange signatures coming from multiple locations on the planet's surface, and there was something behind their moon, something big. "Overlord," she said, "I request permission to delay our approach. My scans show unusual energy readings. I think we should investigate before we continue." Stopped laughing. He looked at with cold eyes. "Unusual energy readings, from a species that still uses chemical fuels. Do not be ridiculous." "But sir, the readings are—" "Enough." His voice was hard. "I will not delay our conquest because you are afraid of shadows. The humans are bluffing. They have nothing. They know they have nothing. This warning is the desperate act of a doomed species." Wanted to argue. Every instinct told her something was wrong, but she knew better than to challenge in front of the crew. She lowered her head. "Yes, Overlord." Turned back to the main screen. "Send a response to the humans. Tell them that their warning is rejected. Tell them that their world now belongs to the collective. Tell them that resistance is useless." The message was sent. On Earth, Minyu received it. He read it aloud to the command center. "Your warning is rejected. Your world belongs to the collective. Your species will serve us or die. Resistance is useless. Prepare for conquest." Admiral nodded slowly. His face showed no emotion. "So they have chosen," he said quietly. "Very well." He turned to, "What is the status of project?" Checked her tablet. Dr. Shin reports all systems ready. The orbital platforms are charged. Captain Park confirms station is at full power. "And the ground batteries?" "Online and waiting." Looked at the clock. 52 minutes remained of the hour. The aliens would not turn back. He knew that now. They were too proud, too confident, too blind. In a way, he felt sorry for them. They did not understand what they were facing. They had conquered weak species, primitive worlds. They had never met humans before. They did not know that humans were different. On station, Captain Park gathered her crew. There were 200 men and women under her command. They had lived on this hidden base for years. They had trained every day. They had waited for this moment. "The aliens rejected our warning," she told them. "In less than 1 hour they will attack. When they do, we will show them what humanity can do." Her crew listened in silence. Some were afraid. That was natural, but none of them showed it. They stood tall and ready. "Our weapons are the most powerful ever created," continued. "We can focus the energy of a star into a beam of light. We can throw metal at speeds no ship can escape. We can burn through any shield, any armor, any defense." She paused and looked at each face. "Today we make history. Today we prove that humanity will not be conquered. Today we show the galaxy that Earth is not weak. Earth is not afraid. Earth is waiting." Her crew saluted. Then they returned to their stations. Dr. Shin made final checks on the systems. 12 massive arrays were hidden across the planet. Each one was built into a mountain or buried underground. From space, they were invisible. But when activated, they could release more energy in 1 second than the sun produced in an hour. "Power levels stable," one of his assistants reported. "Targeting systems calibrated," said another. Nodded. He had spent his entire adult life building these weapons. He had sacrificed everything. His marriage had ended because of his work. He had not seen his children in years. He had given up his health, his happiness, his normal life. But it was worth it. All of it was worth it. Because today, his weapons would save the world. "Begin pre-fire sequence," he ordered. "Lock targets on the largest ships first. We will kill their leaders before they can react." On the Eternal Dominion, the hour was ending. Overlord stood before his commanders. He was ready to give the invasion order. "Deploy the first wave," he commanded. 500 fighters. Strike their major cities. Show them what happens to those who defy them." The order was sent. Across the fleet, fighter pilots climbed into their ships. Engines roared to life. Launch bays opened to the cold vacuum of space. Commander watched the deployment begin. Her stomach was tight with worry. The energy readings from Earth had not changed. They were still there, still growing. She had never seen anything like it. "Overlord," she tried one more time, "please, something is wrong. The humans are not panicking. They are not launching desperate attacks. They are just waiting." Why would they wait? Did not even look at her. Because they know they cannot win. They have accepted their fate. Now be silent and watch our victory. 500 fighters left the fleet. They formed into attack groups. They accelerated toward Earth. In minutes, they would reach the planet. In hours, major cities would burn. That was what should have happened. On Earth, Admiral watched the countdown timer. 3 minutes remained, 2 minutes, 1 minute. "The hour is over," he announced. They did not listen. She nodded. He looked at the screen showing station. Captain's face appeared. She was calm and ready. He looked at another screen showing Doctor's laboratory. The scientist gave a thumbs up. Closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were hard as stone. "All stations," he said clearly. "This is Admiral. The enemy has rejected our warning. They have chosen war. Now we will give them war." He took a breath. "Fire." The word was simple, but it changed everything. On station, pressed the firing button. Activated the arrays. Across the planet, weapons that no alien had ever seen powered up. Energy that no enemy had ever faced began to build. The ground shook. The air hummed. Satellites detected massive electromagnetic spikes. And in space, the first beam of light appeared. It was beautiful in a terrible way, a pure white line cutting through the darkness. It moved faster than thought. It struck the lead group of alien fighters. They did not explode. They did not break apart, they simply disappeared. One moment they were there. The next moment they were atoms spreading into the void. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms began to scream. Officers shouted in confusion. Screens showed impossible data. 50 fighters gone in less than a second. Then another 50. Then another. Commander stared at her display. Her worst fears had come true. "Overlord," she said, her voice hollow. They were not bluffing. Overlord did not answer. He could not answer. He was watching his fighters die. He was watching his invasion fail. He was watching everything he believed crumble to dust. And the beams kept coming. General watched the tactical display with cold eyes. The first wave of alien fighters was gone. All 500 ships had been destroyed in less than 30 seconds. Not damaged, not disabled, destroyed completely. She allowed herself a small smile. Years of planning, years of doubt, years of people calling her crazy. Now it was all paying off. "Status report," she ordered. An officer responded immediately. "All arrays functioning at optimal capacity. Energy reserves at 92%. Station reports all weapons ready for sustained fire." Nodded. The first strike had been a test, a warning shot. The real battle was about to begin. On the Eternal Dominion, chaos ruled. Overlord stood frozen at the center of his bridge. His officers were shouting over each other. Alarms screamed from every station. The main screen showed nothing but debris where his fighters had been. "What happened?" demanded. His voice was tight. "What did they hit us with?" Tactician checked his readings again and again. His hands were shaking. "I do not know, Overlord. The energy signature does not match anything in our database. It appears to be some form of focused plasma discharge, but the power levels are impossible. No species at their technological level should be able to generate such energy." "Impossible," grabbed by his collar and pulled him close. "My fighters are dead. 500 ships gone in seconds. Do not tell me it is impossible." Commander stepped forward. "Overlord, I warned you. The energy readings were there. I told you something was wrong." Released and turned on, his eyes were wild with anger. "You warned me. You warned me of nothing. You spoke of shadows and readings. You did not say they could destroy our entire advance force." "I did not know they could," admitted. "But I knew something was different about these humans. They were too calm, too confident. No species facing annihilation acts that way unless they have a plan." Breathed heavily, his mind was racing. This was not supposed to happen. In 300 years of conquest, they had never lost a battle. Never. Their technology was superior. Their numbers were overwhelming. Their strategy was perfect. But the humans had just killed 500 fighters without losing a single ship. "Pull back the fleet," he ordered finally. "We need to regroup. We need to analyze their weapons. We need a new strategy." Felt relief wash over her. Finally, he was listening. Finally, he was being careful. But it was too late. On Earth, Admiral saw the alien fleet begin to slow. They were trying to retreat. They were trying to escape. He understood their fear. He even felt a moment of pity. But he could not let them go. If the aliens escaped, they would return. They would bring more ships, more weapons. They would be prepared next time. They would know what to expect. Humanity might not win a second battle. This had to end today. This had to end now. "They are retreating," observed. "Should we allow them to withdraw?" Shook his head slowly. "No, we gave them a chance. We warned them. They chose to attack. Now they must face the consequences." He turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to Captain Park. Tell her to begin Phase 2. On station, received the order. Her face showed no emotion as she processed the meaning. Phase 2 was total destruction. No survivors, no escape. "All stations," she announced calmly, "prepare for full engagement. Target all enemy vessels. Priority targets are their largest ships. We end this now." Her crew worked fast. Targeting data flowed across screens, energy built in the weapon arrays. The station hummed with power. "Ready to fire on your command, Captain," her weapons officer reported. Looked at the main screen. 3,000 ships hung in space, millions of beings, living creatures with families, with hopes, with dreams. They had come to enslave humanity. They had planned to kill millions of innocent people. But they were still alive, still thinking, still feeling. Knew what she had to do, she knew it was necessary, but that did not make it easy. "Fire," she said softly. The station unleashed its full power. On the Eternal Dominion, Overlord watched death come for his fleet. Beams of light erupted from the planet below and from somewhere behind the moon. They were not random. They were targeted. Each beam found a ship. Each ship died. "Shields," he screamed. "Full power to shields." "Shields at maximum, Overlord," an officer shouted back. "They are not working. The beams are passing through like our shields do not exist." Could not understand. Shields were the strongest in the galaxy. They could stop nuclear weapons. They could survive direct hits from plasma cannons. They had never failed. But the human weapons ignored them completely. The beams cut through shields, through armor, through everything. Ships that had survived 100 battles were dying in seconds. To the left of the Eternal Dominion, a massive cruiser exploded. Then another. Then another. The flagship shook from the force of nearby detonations. Debris struck the hull. Emergency systems activated. "We have to jump," shouted. "We have to enter hyperspace now." Nodded desperately. "Do it. All ships, emergency jump, get us out of here." Officers scrambled to obey. Hyperspace engines began to power up. In seconds they could escape. In seconds they could be safe. But they did not have seconds. Dr. Shin watched the battle data with satisfaction. His weapons were performing beyond his best predictions. The plasma beams were hitting with perfect accuracy. The alien shields were useless against the focused energy. Everything was working. Then he noticed the hyperspace readings. "Admiral," he called urgently through the communication link, "the aliens are trying to jump to hyperspace. If they escape, they will bring reinforcements." His response was immediate. "Can you stop them?" Thought quickly. The arrays were designed for destruction, not disruption. They could not block hyperspace jumps directly, but there was another option. "I can overload their engines," he said. "If I hit them with a specific frequency pulse, their hyperspace drives will fail. But it will take all our power. We will not be able to fire the main weapons while the pulse is active." "Do it," ordered. "Stop them from escaping. We will finish them with conventional weapons." Turned to his team. "Switch to disruption mode. All arrays prepare for synchronized pulse. We fire in 10 seconds." His team worked with desperate speed. They had practiced this scenario only once. It was experimental. It might not work, but they had no choice. 5 seconds counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. 12 arrays across the planet fired simultaneously. Instead of destructive beams, they released a massive electromagnetic pulse. It spread across space like a wave, invisible but powerful. On the Eternal Dominion, the hyperspace engines screamed and died. Every ship in the fleet experienced the same failure. Jump drives overloaded. Navigation systems crashed. Emergency alerts filled every bridge. "What happened?" demanded. "Our hyperspace drives are offline," reported, his voice filled with terror. "All of them, every ship in the fleet, we cannot jump." Felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. Real, deep, primal fear. They were trapped, they could not escape, and the humans were not finished. In Seoul, General smiled grimly. The pulse had worked. The aliens were stuck. Now it was time to end this. "Admiral," she said, "the enemy cannot retreat. What are your orders?" Looked at the tactical display. 3,000 ships. Many were already damaged or destroyed, but thousands more remained. They could still fight. they could still cause damage. He could offer them surrender. He could show mercy. It was the human thing to do. But remembered why they had built these weapons. He remembered the signals they had intercepted years ago, messages from other conquered worlds, desperate pleas for help, screams of the dying. They did not show mercy. They enslaved entire populations. They destroyed any species that resisted. If showed mercy now, more worlds would suffer, more species would die. They would continue their conquest forever. Sometimes mercy was not kind. Sometimes mercy was just delayed cruelty. No surrender, he said quietly. Destroy them all. On station, Captain Park received the final order. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were hard and cold. All weapons, she commanded. Maximum power, leave nothing behind. The station came alive with energy. The main cannon charged to full capacity. 12 smaller beam weapons locked onto different targets. Missile tubes opened, revealing kinetic projectiles designed to hit with the force of nuclear bombs. Below on Earth, the arrays finished their recharge cycle. Dr. Shin gave the order to resume firing. Across the planet, mountains opened and beams of light shot into the sky. In space, the fleet began to die. Commander stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and watched her comrades burn. Ships she had served with for decades were vanishing. Officers she had known her entire life were dying. The greatest fleet in galactic history was being destroyed by a species that should have been easy prey. She turned to look at Overlord. He was standing at the main screen watching the destruction. His face showed no expression. His eyes were empty. Overlord, she said softly, we need to broadcast a surrender. Perhaps they will show mercy. Did not respond. He did not move. He just watched as another ship exploded, then another, then another. Realized that he was broken. The great conqueror, the undefeated warlord, the terror of 100 worlds was broken. His pride was shattered. His confidence was gone. He had nothing left. She turned away from him and walked to the communications console. If he would not save them, she would try. This is Commander of the Collective, she broadcast on all frequencies. We surrender, please stop firing. We surrender unconditionally, please, we surrender. On Earth, Minu received the message. He looked at Admiral with hope in his eyes. Sir, they are surrendering. They are asking for mercy. Was silent for a long moment. The room waited for his decision. Finally he spoke, too late. And the beams kept falling. The sky over Earth glowed with lines of fire. 12 beams of pure energy shot upward from the planet's surface, cutting through the atmosphere like blades of light. They were beautiful. They were terrible. They were the end of the collective. Dr. Shin stood in his control room and watched the data streams. Every beam was hitting its target. Every target was dying. His life's work was performing exactly as designed. Array 3 is at 80% power, an assistant reported. Cooling systems are working hard. Array 7 has completed its cycle, switching to secondary targets. Array 12 reports optimal performance, no issues. Nodded at each report. He had built these weapons with his own hands. He had sacrificed everything for them. Now they were saving humanity. But he felt no joy, only a cold sense of duty. In space, the fleet was being torn apart. Ships that had conquered worlds were burning. Cruisers that had survived hundreds of battles were breaking into pieces. The greatest military force in the galaxy was dying in minutes. Captain Park commanded the attack from station. Her voice was calm as she directed her crews. Battery 4, shift fire to Sector 7. Battery 6, target the large vessel at coordinates 359. Do not let any ship escape. Her weapons officers worked without rest. Screens showed target after target. Buttons were pressed. Beams were fired. Ships died. One officer, a young woman named, paused to look at the destruction. Tears were forming in her eyes. Captain, she said quietly, they are not fighting back anymore. They are just dying. Understood the young woman's pain. It was one thing to prepare for war. It was another to witness massacre. Even if the enemy deserved it, even if they had planned to enslave humanity, watching millions die was not easy. "I know," replied softly, "but we cannot stop. If we stop, some may escape. If some escape, they will return. We must end this threat forever." Wiped her eyes and returned to her station. She kept firing. On the Eternal Dominion, chaos had given way to despair. The bridge was dark except for emergency lights. Smoke filled the air. Officers lay dead or dying at their stations. Overlord stood alone at the main screen. His fleet was gone. Over 2,000 ships had been destroyed. The remaining vessels were scattered and helpless. Many had lost power completely. Many were already breaking apart. He had led his people to annihilation. He had ignored every warning. He had laughed at the humans and their threats. Now his laughter had turned to ash in his mouth. Commander approached him. Her uniform was torn. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead, but she was alive. "The surrender was rejected," she said flatly. "They are not stopping." Did not respond. "Overlord," continued, her voice rising, "our people are dying. Millions are dead. You have to do something. Give an order, any order." Turned to look at her. His eyes were empty. "What order would you have me give? Our weapons cannot touch them. Our shields cannot protect us. Our engines cannot save us. What order can change any of that?" Had no answer. She had followed this man for 15 years. She had believed in his wisdom, his strength, his vision. Now she saw him as he truly was, a proud fool who had led his people to destruction. "Then I will give the orders," she said coldly. "All ships that can still move, scatter, run in every direction. Some of us may survive." It was a desperate plan. Most ships could not move. Those that could were damaged and slow, but it was better than waiting to die. The order went out. Damaged ships began to limp away from the main fleet. They moved in different directions, hoping that the humans could not track all of them. On Earth, General saw the movement. "They are trying to escape," she reported. "Damaged vessels moving in multiple vectors." Admiral studied the tactical display. Hundreds of ships were scattering like frightened animals. His weapons could not target all of them at once. Some might escape into deep space. "Captain Park," he called, "can you intercept the fleeing vessels?" His voice came through the communication system. "Some, Admiral, not all. We need more weapons coverage." Thought quickly. They had prepared for this. They had planned for every scenario. "Activate the kinetic platforms," he ordered. In orbit around Earth, dozens of hidden satellites came to life. They were small, easily missed by scanners, but they contained humanity's second secret weapon. Kinetic projectiles, simple metal rods, no explosives, no complicated technology, just dense tungsten shaped into long spears. The satellites launched their payloads. Hundreds of metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds. They moved so fast that they could not be seen. They moved so fast that nothing could stop them. In space, the fleeing ships did not even know what hit them. The first kinetic rod struck a cruiser at the speed of light. The impact released more energy than a nuclear bomb. The ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment it was atoms. More rods followed. More ships died. They had never seen weapons like this. They could not defend against them. They could not even detect them until it was too late. Tactician watched from a damaged observation vessel as ship after ship vanished. He had studied warfare his entire life. He had mastered strategy and tactics. He had planned invasions that conquered entire star systems. None of his knowledge mattered now. The humans were not fighting a war. They were conducting an execution. "How?" he whispered to no one. "How did they do this? How did we not know?" The answer was simple but could not accept it. They had been arrogant. They had assumed that all young species were weak. They had assumed that technology followed predictable patterns. They had assumed that they would always be superior. The humans had proven all those assumptions wrong. In his laboratory, Dr. Shin received word that the kinetic platforms had been activated. He smiled grimly. Those platforms were not his design. They were the work of another team, led by a brilliant engineer named Han. She had died 2 years ago from overwork, never knowing if her weapons would save humanity. Now they were saving humanity, would have been proud. Dr. Shin, an assistant, called out, "We are receiving energy readings from the alien flagship. It appears their reactor is destabilizing." Looked at the data. The Eternal Dominion was dying. Damage from nearby explosions had cracked its reactor containment. Within minutes, the entire ship would explode. "Adjust Array 2 to target the flagship," he ordered. "Accelerate its destruction. Do not give them time to evacuate." It was a cruel order. There might be survivors on that ship. There might be beings who wanted to surrender but could not take the risk. The Overlord was on that ship. If escaped, he might rally the survivors. He might rebuild. He might return. Better to end it now. Better to be certain. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms announced the reactor failure. Emergency systems tried to compensate. They were not enough. Overlord stood at the center of his bridge as his ship died around him. He had one final thought before the end. He thought of his, a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver oceans. He thought of his family, long dead now. He thought of the glory he had sought, the empire he had built, the legacy he had wanted to leave. All of it was gone. All of it was meaningless. He had reached for the stars and found only death. The beam from Earth struck the Eternal Dominion. The reactor exploded a moment later. The flagship vanished in a ball of fire that lit up the entire solar system. Commander was not on the bridge when it happened. She had made her way to an escape pod, hopping to survive. The explosion caught her pod and sent it spinning into the void. She did not die immediately. Her pod had enough air for a few hours. She floated in darkness, surrounded by debris, watching the last remnants of her fleet burn. In her final moments, she thought about the humans, such a strange species, so young, so primitive by galactic standards, yet they had weapons that made them look like children. How had they done it? Where had they found such power? Realized she would never know the answer. She would die alone in the cold of space, a victim of her people's arrogance. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. On Earth, the battle was almost over. Less than 100 ships remained. Most were crippled and drifting. A few were still trying to flee. None would succeed. Admiral watched the final moments of the destruction. His face showed no emotion. His eyes were tired. He had won the greatest victory in human history, but he felt no triumph. Only relief, only exhaustion, only the weight of what he had done. General stood beside him. She understood what he was feeling. She felt it too. "It is almost over," she said quietly. Nodded, almost but not quite. He turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to all remaining enemy vessels." "Mean you activated the transmission. Channel open, Admiral." Spoke clearly and slowly. "This is Admiral of Earth. Your fleet is destroyed. Your overlord is dead. You cannot escape. You cannot fight. If any of you wish to surrender, transmit your coordinates now. We will accept prisoners, but you have 5 minutes. After that, we destroy every remaining vessel." The message went out, waited. One by one, damaged ships began to transmit their locations. They were giving up. They were accepting defeat. Felt a small measure of relief. At least some would live. At least some would carry the story of what happened here. "Accept their surrenders," he ordered. "But keep weapons locked on every ship. If any of them try anything, destroy them immediately." The final cleanup began. Rescue ships launched from Earth to collect the survivors. Weapons platforms stayed ready in case of treachery. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But the real work was just beginning. The silence was the worst part. For hours, space had been filled with explosions, screams, and the sound of dying ships. Now there was nothing. Only debris, only darkness, only the cold emptiness of the void. Dr. Shin sat in his laboratory and stared at the final numbers. He had to read them 3 times before he believed them. 3,000 ships had entered the solar system. 47 seconds of combat. That was how long the main battle had lasted. Less than a minute. The remaining cleanup had taken another 3 hours, but the real fighting had ended almost before it began. Of the 3,000 ships, only 73 had surrendered. The rest were destroyed. 2.3 million soldiers were dead. The largest invasion force in galactic history had been erased from existence. And humanity had not lost a single life. Leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He should feel proud. He should feel victorious. Instead, he felt empty. He had helped kill millions of beings. Yes, they were invaders. Yes, they would have enslaved humanity. But they were still alive once. They had families. They had hopes. Now they were atoms drifting through space. One of his assistants approached carefully. Dr. Shin, Admiral is requesting a full report. He needs the weapons data for the official record. Opened his eyes. Tell him I will send it within the hour. I need time to compile everything. The assistant nodded and left, turned back to his screens. Numbers, charts, death counts. This was his legacy. This was what he had spent his life building. He wondered if it was worth it. On station, Captain Park dismissed her crew for rest. They had been at their stations for over 12 hours. They needed sleep. They needed time to process what they had done. Herself did not rest. She walked through the empty corridors of the station, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She had commanded the destruction of thousands of ships. She had given orders that ended millions of lives. She did not regret it. She could not regret it. If she had hesitated, if she had shown mercy, humanity might have been enslaved. Her family on Earth might have been killed or captured. Everything she loved might have been destroyed. But the weight was still there. The knowledge of what she had done, it would stay with her forever. She reached the observation deck and looked out at space. Debris from the battle floated everywhere, pieces of ships, fragments of weapons, and somewhere out there bodies, millions of bodies frozen in the vacuum. "Captain," a voice came from behind her. Turned, it was the young weapons officer who had cried during the battle. "You should be resting," said gently. Shook her head. "I cannot sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see the ships exploding. I see them dying." Understood completely. "Come sit with me." They sat together at the observation window, 2 women who had helped save the world, both carrying the burden of that salvation. "Will it get easier?" asked quietly. Considered the question carefully. "I do not know. I have never done anything like this before. No one has. We will have to find our own way through it." "Do you think we did the right thing?" Yes, his answer was immediate and certain. They would have enslaved us. They would have killed millions. They would have destroyed everything we built. We had no choice. But we killed so many. We killed invaders. We killed conquerors. We killed beings who came to our home with weapons and hatred. Paused. We did not start this war. We ended it. There is a difference. Nodded slowly. She did not look convinced, but she looked less troubled. They sat in silence for a long time, watching the debris float past the window. On Earth, the world was waking up to the news. For the first 12 hours, governments had kept the battle secret. They had not wanted to cause panic, but now the truth was spreading. Aliens had come to Earth. Aliens had tried to invade. Humanity had destroyed them completely. The reactions were mixed. Some people celebrated. They cheered in the streets, waving flags and singing songs. Humanity had faced its greatest test and won. Others were afraid. If one alien fleet could find Earth, others could too. The universe was no longer a mystery. It was a threat. Every star in the sky could hide an enemy. And some people were horrified. They had learned that their governments had secretly built weapons of unimaginable power, weapons that could destroy entire fleets in seconds. What else were their leaders hiding? Admiral watched the news reports from his office in the Sol Command bunker. He had expected all these reactions. He had prepared for them. General entered without knocking. She looked exhausted but alert. "The prisoners are secured," she reported. 73 ships, approximately 15,000 survivors. They are being held in a secure orbital facility. Nodded. "Any problems?" "No, they are completely broken. They are not resisting anything. Most of them are just sitting in silence." Understandable. Their entire worldview has been shattered. Sat down across from him. "What do we do with them?" It was a good question. Humanity had never had alien prisoners before. There were no rules for this situation, no guidelines, no precedents. "We treat them fairly," decided. "We give them food, water, medical care. We do not torture them. We do not abuse them. We show them that humans are not monsters. And then we learn from them. We find out everything they know about the galaxy, other species, other threats, technology, politics, everything." Nodded. "And after that?" Was quiet for a moment. "I do not know. Maybe we send them back to their people. Maybe we keep them here. That decision is above my rank. The politicians will have to figure it out." The politicians made a sound of disgust. "They hid while we fought. Now they will take credit for our victory." Let them. Was too tired to care about politics. As long as humanity survives, I do not care who gets the credit. In a secure medical facility, one of the prisoners was being examined. She was a young officer, barely an adult by her species standards. Her name was Lyra. She had served on a small support vessel. She had never fired a weapon in her life. The human doctor examining her was named. He was gentle and careful, treating her injuries with soft hands. "Does this hurt?" he asked through a translation device. Lyra shook her head. She was afraid, but the human was not hurting her. He was helping her. She did not understand. "Why are you being kind to me?" she asked. "We came to destroy you. We came to enslave your people. Why do you not hate me?" Paused in his work. He considered the question seriously. "Because hate is easy," he said finally. "Kindness is harder, but kindness is what makes us human." Lyra did not fully understand, but she remembered his words. She would remember them for the rest of her life. Lieutenant Minyu was given a week of leave after the battle. He went home to his family in. His parents did not know what he had done. They did not know that their son had delivered humanity's warning to the aliens. They did not know that his voice had been the last thing many of the heard before they died. He could not tell them. It was classified, top secret. Maybe someday the truth would come out. Maybe someday he could explain. For now, he just hugged his mother and let her cook him dinner. He played games with his younger brother. He sat with his father and watched the sunset. These simple things had almost been taken from him, from everyone. The aliens would have destroyed all of it. Minyu was glad he had played his small part in stopping them. In the days after the battle, something strange happened. The nations of Earth stopped fighting each other. Old enemies put aside their differences. Wars that had lasted decades suddenly ended. Humanity had seen what was out there. They had seen the threat, and they understood that their petty conflicts no longer mattered. A new government was formed. The United Earth Council became the true ruling body of the planet. Every nation had a seat. Every voice was heard. For the first time in history, humanity was truly united. Admiral was offered command of the new United Earth Defense Force. He accepted, but only on one condition. He wanted Dr. Shin, Captain Park, and General at his side. They were the heroes of the battle. They deserved to shape humanity's future. The council agreed. in his first address as Supreme Commander, spoke to the entire planet. "We have won a great victory," he said, "but it is not the end, it is the beginning. The galaxy knows about us now. Other species will come. Some will be friends, some will be enemies. We must be ready for both." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "We did not ask for this responsibility. We did not want this war, but we faced it. We survived it. We won it. And we will face whatever comes next with the same courage, the same unity, and the same determination." His voice grew stronger. "We are humanity. We are Earth. And we will never be conquered. We will never surrender. We will never give up. This is our world. This is our home. And we will defend it until the last star burns out." The speech ended. Across the planet, people cheered. They had a leader. They had hope. They had a future. The battle was over, but the story of humanity was just beginning.